Greetings of peace and love, everybody. My name is Ram Hotep, broadcasting on behalf of 13scienceastrology.com. I'm doing this video on the science and metaphysics of age. Yes, there is a science and metaphysics, a metaphysical aspect behind the age. The particular age that you are represents your development. I think that here in the Matrix, age is taken for granted. When I say that, I mean that I think that a lot of young people want to be older and they can't wait to grow up. And I think that a lot of older people are ashamed of their age because they are getting older. And I think a lot of people base their relationships off of age. I think a lot of things in the Matrix in general are based off of age on a linear level. And it doesn't really do a good job, and it doesn't do a good service to the participants in this game as far as dealing with age, because they never really go to the root as far as understanding the metaphysics behind age. You see, there's a science behind age that directly relates to the chakra system and energies unfolding. So, for instance, let's start off with the ages of between a newborn child and 7 years old. These are what we call the root chakra years. During these years of the newborn all the way up until the age of 7, it's important that the child does not move around a lot. It's important that the child is grounded. It's important that the child is taught a sense of self. As far as when I say a sense of self, I'm talking about like knowledge of self, teaching the child the history of, the family history. Really giving the child thorough information about its family tree, its roots. These are the years that the child is to be totally grounded in, whether or not they're a boy or a girl. You ground them in all of all these things between the ages of the newborn and 7 years old. So that's the first basically part. The root chakra years is like the first part of human development and human growth. And when people missed out on a lot of the things that happen or that are supposed to happen in the root chakra years, like say for instance, people that move around a lot, people that weren't given a lot of nurturing by their mothers, which is important in the root chakra years, people that didn't basically get those things that they needed to have a healthy root chakra will have root chakra issues in their adult life. So to really get into wondering why people have blocked chakras is because when they were that age, when that chakra was opening during that time period, they weren't getting the nurturing or doing the things that they were supposed to do to cultivate the development of the opening of that particular chakra. So that's the root chakra years. Now, between the ages of 7 and 14, these are the what's called the sacral chakra years. And the sacral chakra years are the time when you get introduced to sexuality. Sexual energy. You get introduced during these times to your kundalini. This is when you introduce the child to its kundalini energy, and you introduce the child to sexual energy. During these, between the period of the age of 7 and 14, you introduce the child into their sexuality, who they are. This is also the time that the child starts to become acidic, and this is why a lot of children have acne. And acne comes from a horrible diet. But it also comes because more acid begins to be produced during the ages of 7 and 14 in the human body, according to my research. So during this time, you want to make sure that the child begins to really eat alkaline now. This is when the child's diet comes into play as well. During the times of 7 and 14, you want to teach the child its diet, and you want to really do that. And there are, amongst other things. Now, from the ages of 14 to 21, this is the will. This is the age of the will and the development of the will. W-I-L-L, the will. This is when you are supposed to develop, basically will is courage. So this is when you are supposed to develop courage as a child going into your adult years now, your young adult years. So you're coming out, you have your sexuality intact, you know what I'm saying? If you're healthy, of course, you're grounded. So now you're going into your will, developing who you are, asserting yourself into the world. You're learning about yourself and how you assert yourself and how to assert yourself into the world. This is what you're doing from the ages of 14 to 21. Part of these years is you're finishing your high school years and your schooling. And really, technically, according to the ancients, see, I teach it like this now, but back in the days, if I was teaching in the ancient times, I would teach it differently, because the ancients, you were grown when you turned 14. When you had your bar mitzvah, see, your bar mitzvah, they associate that as a Jewish holiday, but the bar mitzvah goes back to Kemet, Tamareh. And the bar mitzvah basically is a rites of passage for young adults, young adult males, from going into boyhood to manhood. And this took place at 13. So when the child was 14, they already were, basically, when they got into their third chakra years or their will years, they were already considered grown back in the days. But now they aren't. And this is why a lot of children start getting in trouble at this time. Because they're really grown. But they weren't taught to be grown men from the ages of 0 to 14. See, they weren't taught this way during the times of 0 to 14, because a lot of young boys were raised by women with no men on the scene, and a woman can't make a man. And a lot of the young girls were raised by women, of course, but they had no male father on the scene to teach them certain things about how men are and to teach them about the man. So when they get older, yeah, they have the mama on the scene and the woman on the scene, but the mama can't teach the daughter about how men are or how men think, because she's not a man. She could try her best, but a man does a better job at that, and that's really a man's job with his daughter, is to teach her about men and the process of dating and survival and how to make it here in this dog-eat-dog world, which is ran by men. This world is ran by men for right now, which is going to change. So, yeah, like, I mean, really a person's supposed to be grown at the age of 14. They're supposed to be grown, but they're not. So this is why a lot of people are getting in trouble and the kids start getting into fights, and that's why the teenagers have all the energy and they get really destructive in school during these times, because they're grown. If they were taught right, they would be out in society right now. Grown, they would be fully able to take care of themselves, but they're not, because they're not taught right. And this society is not set up for that, because it's all about money. And you have to be 18 to be considered grown here, which is metaphysics behind that, but I won't go into that here. I won't go into why 18 is considered the age of being grown. Really, it's 21, actually. Why 21 or 18 is considered the age that you are when you're considered to be grown. So yeah, these are the will years, asserting yourself into the world, ages 14 to 21. Now, when you get into from 21 to 28, these are what we call the compassion years. This is when you start to feel. This is from 21 to 28 is the best time to start having children. I know your sexuality is activated way earlier than that, but this is the best time. I'm not saying, I mean, the only time. This is the best time to have children, during the times of 21 to 28, during the ages of 21 to 28, because you're learning about compassion. Now you aren't just worried about yourself. You see, you are worried about the next person. You're worried about the next man or whatever, the next man or the next woman or whatever. So from the ages of 21 to 28, these are when you get a heart. Your heart starts to develop. You see, this is when you gain compassion. This is when you gain compassion. So you have the root chakra years, ages 0 to 7. You have the sacral chakra years, is when you learn about your sexuality, from 7 to 14. You have your will years, which is your third chakra years, which starts from 14 to 21. Then you have your heart chakra years, which goes from 21 to 28. This is when you develop compassion, a feeling, a sense of caring about the world. This is when you really basically become a real life responsible adult during these years, supposedly. Then after that, that's when your Saturn return hits, when you turn 28. So this is when it gets real interesting. When you turn 28, this is when everything that you've done your whole life, it's kind of like halftime. This is kind of like halftime. This is a good way of explaining it, like in a game. Halftime is when everybody takes a break. They kind of review their progress, see what's going on. That's basically what goes on with Saturn return. When Saturn return comes back, oh yeah, you get to see full swing your karma, or your making. Your karma means you're making. So you get a chance to see your energy come back at you at 28. Preparing for your years of real life true adulthood, which takes you into the ages of 28 and 35. These are your throat chakra years. These are the years that you begin to speak your truth. These are the years that you're not shy anymore. You're not going to hold back when you're around a group of people, and you're not going to say anything. These are the years when you become vocal, you become opinionated, and you begin to express yourself. But like, not just express yourself unskillfully, but you begin to skillfully express yourself or learn how to. This is when you begin to develop that trait of, you know, you may be getting into a lot of arguments, say for instance in relationships in your 20s, you get into a lot of arguments because, you know, you in your will years, you in your heart years, you still learning about caring and compassion, you still learning those lessons. So when you get into your throat years, you know what I'm saying, you should have mastered that now. So now you're a good communicator. You know how to communicate with your woman. You know what I'm saying? You know how to communicate with people that you have a disagreement with. You are mastering the art of being a diplomat. You know what I'm saying? A communicator. You should have mastered that in the throat chakra years or whatever, which is from 35. And in the ancients, during the ancient times, this is when you were getting initiated now. Like from 28 to 35, this is when you begin to get initiated into the mysteries. They started the initiation into the mysteries from 28 to 35. It didn't end until, we're going to get into that, it didn't end until the 6th chakra years, and that's when it ended. The initiation ends when you get into the 6th chakra years, which is from the years of 42, I'm sorry, from 35 to 42. This is when your pineal gland begins to open. This is when you basically become a priest, supposedly, or this is when you are getting prepared to become a priest, and you're supposed to be ready to become a priest. You start getting ready at 28, but you're not fully all the way initiated until you get like 44. You know what I'm saying? You get all the way into it or whatever. But from the ages of 35 to 42 are your times of, you know, you're in your second half of initiation. Your pineal gland's opening. This is when you begin to learn about the astral plane and what's going down in the realm of things that we can't see, which is called the astral realm or whatever. You start to learn about these things. This is by now keep in mind, most people don't make it to this level when they turn this age because they're not initiating and teaching people like this. This is the metaphysics of age, and this is basically talking about how things are supposed to go for a healthy person based upon the chakras opening and certain other metaphysical DNA explosions taking place and things like that. This is all based on that type of information. But for people that that grew up in the West, that grew up under people that have Western consciousness, they're not going to really understand a lot of this information or whatever because they don't get into getting initiated into any priesthood. By the time you're 40 in the Matrix, you're caught over the hill. Like this is when you're over the hill. So, I mean, you're not going to get initiated into. I mean, you're not thinking about like stuff like that. You're thinking about basically how your death is going to be. You know what I'm saying? You're thinking about sitting on the couch watching the game and eating a bunch of onions and a bunch of potato skins or whatever, watching the game or whatever. Like at that time, this is when you basically in the Matrix. This is when you start to give up. Most people, you know what I'm saying, a lot of people, the 85%ers, put it that way. This is when the 85%ers are those people that are unconscious. Basically at 40, this is when they start to give up. They're like, oh, I'm old now. They start to call themselves old and all that. But this is really when you really are just beginning as far as your body. Because at 42, from 35 to 42, you're fully incarnated into your body. It takes you 42 years to fully incarnate into your body. So basically what I mean by that is to fully be able to operate your vehicle properly. If you're taught how to do it though. Because if you're not even taught how to do it, it's going to take you longer than that. You know what I'm saying? So, but if you're taught how to do it, it takes you up until 42 years to even master your body, your chakras, all of that stuff. To learn how to use your body. Your body is a vehicle. So it's just like a car, like I was talking about before. It's like a car. So you have to learn how to operate this car. You know what I'm saying? And your body is very much like a vehicle or a spaceship or something like that. You have to learn how to operate it. It takes years to learn how to operate it. People aren't initiated into sexuality properly, like learning how to have proper sex and things like that. So this is why society is the way it is. You know what I'm saying? Because people aren't properly initiated into working with their body, learning about their health, learning about how to heal themselves. These are the things that you would learn in the priesthood in the preparation, so that when you became 42 and going into 44, you would make your initiation, and then now you're a priest. So now you're initiated into herbology, alchemy, and all of these things deal with the human body, of course. You're initiated into all of these things. And you're initiated into sexuality, astrology, all these different things by the time you turn 42, if taught properly. And then from there, you go into your crown chakra years, and this is when you basically become an enlightened being from the ages of 44 on out. You're supposed to be living in enlightenment at that point, and this is when you basically go back and you teach other people. You start to raise other people up into the knowledge that you learn. So you spend the rest of your life as basically a priest, which is beyond a master. The master level starts at the initiation level. This is when you start to learn mastery of self when you get initiated, which is, like I said, after the Saturn return. When you become a priest, you've already mastered everything. You're able to not only master, but you are a doctor, which is really a doctor as a teacher. So now you're a professor. You're able to profess this information because now you're a priest. So these are like the real metaphysics behind age, what was going down in the mystery system, kind of like, I mean, of course, this is just a YouTube video, so I mean, I just walked you through thousands of, I mean, 40 and 50 years worth of information, you know what I'm saying, in a short period of time or whatever. So of course, you know what I'm saying, I didn't cover everything, but this is basically what goes down and how we're supposed to raise ourselves up. We are to be raised up as beings that are human, having a human experience. You are to be raised up into humanhood, into humanity. You're to be raised up into that. And it's a certain way that you are supposed to be taught. And your parents aren't going to teach you these things because they don't know. Society is not going to teach you these things because society is all about keeping people in a state of being minors or minorities, and they don't want you to become a full live being or a full live initiate or a full blown priest. Like they don't want you to become that. You know what I'm saying, in society. So they want you to stay locked up in a box or whatever, pretty much, to make a long story short or whatever. And they do this by keeping you ignorant. This is how they keep you locked up in a box, by keeping you ignorant to certain information. And the science of age, very important thing, because really the ultimate ignorance is the ignorance of one who has no knowledge of themselves. When you have no knowledge of yourself, that's the ultimate ignorance. Because I mean, you can learn all this stuff in the world, but if you don't know who you are, the information really is irrelevant. You know what I'm saying? Like you can learn about metaphysics. I mean you can learn about quantum physics and all this stuff and Scientology and just all this beautiful information and brilliant information. But if you don't know yourself or who you are, it's not really relevant because you can't apply it. Like it's only basically just knowledge like that you can reference. But when you start talking about critical application and basically applying things, you can't do it because you don't know yourself. And knowledge of self is the beginning and ending of all knowledge. So with that, I'll go ahead and close on this video. That's the basic metaphysics behind age. Like those of you that have children, child like this, raise your child like so by the time they turn 14 years old that they know how to take care of themselves. I mean, of course, in this matrix in society,
they're not going to be able to be free to take care of themselves because in the matrix, you're not an adult. You know what I'm saying? Which means to be adulterated, but you're not an adult, so you're not free to go out here and really get an apartment and do certain things, but you should at least raise your child to be able to do these things if push came to shove, if something was to happen to you. And in this society, people don't do these things anymore. They just keep these children dumbed down, basically. And they keep them dumbed down. The children are very intelligent, but we keep them dumbed down here in the matrix with misinformation, false information, basically keep them dumbed down. So, I mean, we want to definitely use the principles in this video and begin to teach our children in this way so that they'll know how to do certain things. I mean, it's just like the Bible says, you train the child in the way that he or she shall go, and they will not part therefrom. So you teach them that way, even though, like, of course, in society, they're not going to allow them to be free at the age of 13 and 14. But like the Jews, I mean, the Jews teach their children know how to fully take care of themselves in the family business by the time they're 14 years old. I mean, they're fully functional adults. This is how they raise their children. So that's one thing I can say about my parents. I mean, I was raised to be very independent. My parents raised me to be independent. I mean, I knew how to do everything at the age of 14. You know what I'm saying? I mean, there's a lot of other things I missed. I'm not saying that I got the metaphysics of age and the stuff that I'm breaking down in this video. I wasn't raised like that. But, I mean, as far as the independence part and being able to take care of myself, I wouldn't trade that in for the world because that got me a long way in society and things like that. So, I'm going to go ahead and shut this video down, y'all. Thank you for watching my channel. And until we meet again, I'll leave you guys in peace and prosperity.